Am I? All right, here we go. Okay, so notes on 2-1. All right, so we have frequency distributions and their graphs. Okay. So examining distributions. Okay, so what we do here was we look for overall patterns and noticeable deviations from the pattern. Okay, we're talking about frequency distributions. So the overall pattern can be described by shape, center, and spread. Okay, to describe your shape, you can have one mode, unimodal, or many modes, peaks. Could be symmetric or skewed. So we're talking about a frequency distribution, usually what they look like. Axis, it's kind of like a city connected. Oh, mine are not being connected, but they will be. Okay. Okay. So if it's one mode, that means you can see that there is a number, or it could be an interval. All right, that is the highest. Okay, or contains the most. And then many modes, many peaks. You might have one that's exactly the same height. Okay, so that could be bimodal. So there's two of them, or multimodal if there's more than two. Symmetric or skewed. So with up and then comes back down, okay, in a nice little bell curve. Okay, up and down. Skewed means that it's either skewed to the left or skewed to the right. So with the skewness, okay, it might be real small here, okay, and then get higher like this, or the other way as well. Might start out high like this, okay, and then get smaller like that, okay. So this is skewed to the left, this is skewed to the right. Okay. What's that? This one here, just symmetric. Yep, symmetric. Okay, you kind of can fold it in half, okay, over the middle. Now, it's not going to be perfect, okay? They're not going to be perfect. So you might have one that has 7, one that has 8, and another one that 5 and 4, 3, 3. Okay, so it'll be close. Okay, it's not going to be perfect. And then one of the most important deviations is an outlier. This is an individual value that falls outside the overall pattern. So if we have our data like this, and then maybe we have one way over here. Okay, that's an outlier. Okay, probably the best example of an outlier is if I took the average age of the students in this room, it would be, you know, pretty representative of the students in the school, okay, or in the high school. But then if I took the average age of everybody in this room, okay, now you throw my age in, what happens? Okay, yeah, it's going to skew the data. Okay, so that's the outlier. So instead of being maybe 17, 8, 16, 17, 18, now all of a sudden you're talking about 20, maybe 21. Okay, yeah, I know. So it could have a major effect on it. So sometimes you have the outlier and you just throw it away. And outlier, determine something is outlier, look for points that are clearly apart, like I just showed you. Yeah, histogram with an entire bar missing, and usually the outlier is even further away than just one bar or one interval. And then the range, of course, these are some terms that you've seen before, is the difference between the max and min entries. So that's the range. Range is always the max minus the min. Okay, the range in your intervals. Now, creating histograms. They have a long guideline, 5-step process when you are constructing frequency distribution from a data set, constructing your histograms. But we're going to simplify it, and we are going to talk about classes. Now, the book uses classes. Okay, classes are the same thing as intervals. So when you're looking at the interval of a frequency distribution, that's a class, okay, because they talk about upper class limits, lower class limits, class width, and class boundaries, so they always refer to it as a class, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to create and complete a table with interval, tally, and frequency. So that's how you start your histogram. You have to have your interval or your class, your tally, and your frequency from the data given. So now we need, this is where we're going to need another piece of paper. All right, so we are, you have your separate sheet of paper. All right, chapter 2, page 1A. We are going to determine the proper intervals. So we're going to take the range and divide it by the number of classes. So I am going to, I think I want 6 classes. 6 classes, yes. It usually will tell you how many classes you want. If not, usually a minimum of 4 or 5, because you want to make sure the data is spread out. You don't want to just have, 2 bars that you're looking at. That's it, because you really can't say anything about the data. So in order to find the interval, what we need to do is we need to find the highest number and the lowest number. So find the range of values. Sometimes it takes you a little bit. What's the highest number? 96. And what's the lowest? 9. Okay? So to find your range, we have to do 96 minus 9 divided by 6, which is the number of classes we want. So this range is going to be of each class. Okay, so you take the range of all the data, and then to find the range of each individual class, you do the highest minus the lowest divided by the number of classes. So go ahead, throw that in your calculator. If anyone's got one ready to go, rock and roll. So you should get 14.5. Now, the key thing when you are determining the range, you're not going to say 14.5 for your range. Okay? You always, always, always round up. Okay? Something nice to put in your notes. Always round up. Because if you round down, you might miss grabbing the 96 or the highest value. So you always round up. And so usually just go to the next whole number. If you go too high, then you have a top interval that has nothing. Okay? So that's the first thing that you have to do. Okay? Find your range. That's going to be the interval. That's every single class. Okay? So what do we have here? We're going to have class. All right, now we're going to have 1, 2, 3. We're going to have 6 of them total. I don't know if I'll get to all 6 today, but I'll at least do, I probably will. Okay, but we'll at least do the first 3. So we're going to have a class, a tally, and your frequency. And this is when the data is given to you. So we give you data, you have to organize the data. Now, you have to follow a very specific process when you're doing the class. All right, every year we go through the process, and someone does it differently, and it's incorrect. Okay, so you always start with the lowest number. So 9 is the lowest number. Okay, that's the lowest number in your data. You're going to need more space than that. I don't know why you're not doing this on your separate sheet of paper like I've already told you. So you start with 9. Okay, now what we do to the 9, these are called the lower class limits. These are all lower. You have to do all lower class limits first. So I start with 9, and then I add to it the class width. So I add 15. So you have a calculator, 9 plus 15, and you get 24. Okay? Then 24 plus 15 is 39. Add another 15, 54, another 15, 69, another 15, 84. In order to have the right class width, you have to do all your lower class limits first. And then backfill. What does that mean? Well, then you just have to do one less than all your lower class to get your upper class limits. So since this is 24, this would be 23. Next one would be 38. 53, 68, and then 83. Okay? And then you have to find the last one. So the last one is the only one that you really have to do something with. Okay, and what do? you would do 83 plus 15. And 83 gives me 98. Okay. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 classes like you want. You have a class width of 15. You have to be very careful with the class width, because if you did 23 minus 19, do 23 minus 19 in your calculator, what does that give you? It gives you what? What? Oh, I'm sorry, 9. 23 minus 9 would give you, I did say 19, 14. Okay? So if I did 23 minus 9, you see how it gives me 14, but the class width is 15. Okay, why does that happen? Because one of these numbers is included. So if you were to do 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. See how there's 15 numbers that fall in that class? Okay, so anytime that I give you an interval or I give you the classes and you want to find the class width, it's the difference of any two consecutive lower class limits or upper class limits. Okay, so that's the key. It's very important. You've got to be very careful with that. Okay, so now your tallies, you can start anywhere you want. Some of you might go and do all 9 through 23s and look at them. Some of you might just say, okay, a 21 goes here. And then you put a little check because you already did the 21. Be very careful. 32, where do you go 32? I go here. If you put this, if you exit out and then you go count them and you're missing one, now you might look at this and say, oh my God, I exited out. What is that? Is it a 32? Is it a 52? What is it? Okay? So I like to just put a little check next to it or above it. All right? So why don't you take a minute and figure out your tallies. Okay, however you want to do it. So hopefully you have the same number of tallies as I did. So the frequency, okay, so tallies, you have your tallies. So like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. Okay? I'm sure you've maybe seen that before. I don't know. Sometimes you assume too much. So in the first class, I have 7 numbers between 9 and 23. Does everyone get that? So that's how you would show me tallies like this. And then you would take that, the frequency is the actual number. So you would have 7. Okay, I didn't put the tallies up because you guys were doing it, and you guys were doing it just fine. So I had 7, 7, 2, 5, 4, 3. You can line yours up better than mine. Well, mine aren't too bad. Everyone get 7, 7, 2, 5, 4, 3? Okay, good. All right, now, once you do that frequency, there's really no way for you to check unless you just keep checking it again and again. Okay? The key thing you want to do is you want to add up your frequency. All right? So when you get that, all those values, add them up, take the time to do this, and that total should be 28. So these numbers, when I add them all together, give me 28. Then what do? Go back up here, or go back to your data, and count and make sure that there are 28 pieces of data. There's going to be times when you have a lot of pieces of data. It's stats. Okay, and we talked about this the other day. What happens when you have larger sets of data? You're more accurate. Okay, so if you just do these basic 5 or 6 pieces of data, it doesn't tell you anything. Okay, so the higher the data count, the more accurate you're going to be. Okay, everyone okay with that, with the class tally and frequency? Okay, good. And anything that we talk about here, remember, you want to put down your notes. Okay, again, when you go away to college, that's what's going to happen. You know, they're going to lecture you, they're going to give you pointers, and it's your responsibility to put them in. So like I said, we have 6 total, so I have 3 more coming up. Now, this, underneath it, we're going to add. So you write on that same page. Right underneath, we're going to add midpoint, relative frequency, and cumulative frequency. You can just do one at a time. You don't have to do them all, okay, because you don't know how much space you need. And this is from page 42. So if you look at page 42, I would put it right underneath this table, okay, because that way it's all together with the example. I told you 6 classes. And I probably will tell you 6 classes on any quiz or test, because if you do 6, someone else does 7, someone else does 8, someone does 4. Now look how many times I have to do it, okay? But usually, I know. Usually the minimum is 4 or 5, okay? And then you don't want so many like, oh my God, I'm going to do 20 classes. Oh, holy cow, then that doesn't tell you anything either. You would because you're crazy. Uh-huh. You're true. Something to aspire to. Okay? So with your, down here, midpoint, relative frequency, cumulative frequency. There are the definitions. If you need to write the whole thing down, whatever you need. If you can just say, oh, midpoint is a lower class limit plus the upper class limit divided by 2, fine. Okay, not a problem. Whatever you need to write down. So I'll give you a couple minutes to write those down. All right, so the three columns, the midpoint, the relative frequency, and the cumulative frequency. Hopefully you can squeeze them in. Okay, maybe if you want to put them between, that's okay too, because then tomorrow we'll do another one completely. All right, that way you'll have everything organized, everything in the right columns. Okay, now your midpoint, your term. When you looked at it, it says that the class is the sum of the lower and the upper class limits of the class divided by 2. Midpoint is something I call the class mark. I'll never call it the class mark. Okay, and I don't think I've ever seen it in a book called the class mark. So what RF and CF mean is relative frequency and cumulative frequency. I just kind of pulled them out of the air, you know what I mean? So, you're reading, sometimes you read these definitions like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, okay? So with the midpoint, what we're doing is it's each individual class. So for the first one I'll show you, so we have 9 plus 23 divided by 2. Okay? Because you have your lower class limit plus the upper class limit divided by 2. Okay? That's how you always do it. So then I plug that into my calculator, I get 16. Okay? And then the next one, put in your calculator, 24 plus 38 divided by 2. Now you got to be very careful when you do it as well. Okay, when you put that in, plug it in, you get 31. Okay? So if you don't use the fraction button, what it does is it says 24 plus 38 divided by 2. Just that 38 divided by 2. Bless you. So you got to be very careful of that. Make sure your midpoint falls within the class limits. Okay? So if I get a midpoint of 52 for my second interval, my second class, it makes no sense. Okay? Because it's not even in there. And then when you continue on, 16, 31, 46, 61, 76, and, thank you, 91. Okay? What's that? So all you do is just each individual. So like this second one would be 24 plus 38 divided by 2. See how I'm taking the lower class and the upper class limit, adding them together. Okay. And then you would do it for each one, 39 plus 53 divided by 2. Okay, now, how can you check these? I can check these by doing class or midpoint 2 minus midpoint 1. 31 minus 16 is 15. 46 minus 31 is 15. Okay? So the midpoint should always go up by the what? What is 15? Class, way up here, look. Class width. Okay? So your midpoint should always go up by the class width. If it doesn't, that's how you could tell you did one of the classes wrong. Okay, but what stinks is you don't do the midpoint till here, and so if you already did the tally of frequencies, like, oh my God, I did the classes wrong, now you got to start all over again. Okay, it happens. It happens. The class width data are in each class. So between 9 and 23, there are 15 pieces of data that fall in that class. Your class width. And that's how we found by looking at the range of all the values. Okay, took the difference, divided it by the number of classes. Yes, yep, exactly. Yep. Okay, and you know what I'll do? I'll stop there because the relative frequency is a little more involved. So we'll pick up with relative frequency tomorrow, with cumulative frequency, practice problem, and then the quiz on Friday. Okay?